whole house was shook really violently. I've had a lot of texts from friends and colleagues saying that they felt exactly the same thing. There's a lot of police activity out there. I'm not sure it's to do with protests. I've lived through LA earthquakes and it wasn't far off, to be quite honest. Not the worst of them, but there was a whole lot of shaking going on, that's for sure.
Interesting indeed. Well, we'll try and get some numbers on that and confirmation on that event there in Melbourne. But we did get you on to talk about the building industry, the fact that construction's been shut down and those protests that haven't been able to be avoided over the last 3 days. Just how much is this costing the industry?
Well, Laura, the best estimate is well over $1 billion, perhaps, 2 billion a week. There's some estimates of almost 500 million a day. You think of it this way, there's over 100,000 construction-related employers in Victoria. Then you've got the whole rest of the industry associated with it. Think of steel, think of concrete, think of aggregates, dirt and stone, think of glass and cabling, think of the demolition work that goes on, the logistics behind it, the trucking, all of that. So this is going to have a huge impact on the Victorian and then the national economy. A 2-week shutdown. It is going to be massive in terms of job losses and stand downs as well as pure economic cost. And we had a lot from members yesterday, Laura, who aren't in construction saying that their work was going to have to stop because they weren't going to be able to receive the materials that constructors would normally get, which they also receive. So there are huge knock-on effects. It didn't have to be like this.
Yeah, OK, so it didn't have to be like this. We heard, obviously there's a hardcore group of people in the construction industry that don't want to get vaccinated. And Premier Andrews was saying this morning that there are more people with COVID in the building sector now than there are in aged care. Is that a comparison that is right to put forward at this point?
Well, it seems slightly odd. There are many, many, many more people working in construction than in aged care, and their circumstances are completely different. Where I was going with it didn't have to be like this was that there had been spot checks on construction, and depends on who you talk to. Some say up to 50% weren't complying, others say it was much less. But to shut down an entire industry of its economic value to the state and the country is a massive step. Nobody is going to condone the violence of yesterday. It was pretty terrible to see, and it wasn't sort of the Melbourne that Melburnians recognise. But there's a lot of frustrated people out there. World's longest lockdown, a lot of concerns around the roadmap coming out, and in the end, it sort of spilled over with what happened yesterday and on Sunday, unfortunately, on the streets in Melbourne. Can't condone it, but now we've said to the state government, please come and consult. We're here to help, but the government has shown a real propensity to not want to consult with any industry across any sector before it makes hard and fast sort of sledgehammer decisions. And that's what I mean when I say it didn't have to be like this. We could have all found another way.
Yeah, and the lack of consultation seems to be what has affronted many of the protests. Again, no one condemning the violence, of course. There is a tale of two cities at the moment, two states, really. New South Wales did shut down construction for a short time, but it has really done everything it can to keep going. Victoria did that at a point. So I guess it's hard to understand why at this point construction has been shut down.
Well, it is, and in the way that it has. I think that's what's concerned a lot of people, and a lot of people are concerned about the knock-on effects and the greater insecurity it will cause across the economy. Victoria's a long way into this dealing with COVID. We're a long way into Delta, and to shut down a huge employing sector like this now was deeply unfortunate, and in the way that it occurred, with very little notice and very little warning and virtually no consultation, except almost after the decision had been made as an explanation of what was meant to happen. That's why we could have done this much better and not taken the sledgehammer to an entire sector of the economy on which a whole lot of the rest of the economy relies. Now, people in Melbourne say, well, perhaps this won't end for weeks in construction because Melbourne may stay in lockdown for another 5 weeks or so. So that's adding to the uncertainty when this ends. So the whole problem for industry in Victoria right through COVID has been the inability to plan and to make considered decisions around, how they should look to the next few weeks, let alone the next few months.
Yeah.
And now the biggest probably part of our economy in many ways now without education is construction, and now that's in that same boat.
Well, Ines, we know that there are huge supply chain problems in the construction industry anyway. It's exorbitantly expensive to build anything at the moment. Add this to the lockdown and also, the construction industry being stopped. What are the medium and long-term effects of this?
Well, Laura, constructors and others who were building in Melbourne consistently have told us that building in Victoria is 30 to 40% more expensive than most of the rest of the country, and that's even before the uncertainties created by this shutdown and this lockdown. It will take weeks and weeks for the industry to get back up and running again once it is formally allowed to do that. You just can't turn construction on overnight. It takes a lot of planning and a lot of logistics to do that. So the costs are going to be enormous. The reputational impacts are going to be huge within Victoria. And it will unfortunately probably make a lot of people think that coming to Victoria to build is not worth it. The other point is that it's affected not just major projects, but virtually all construction across the state, in big parts of the state. So that impacts on residential construction. So the time delays and the knock-ons from all of this are going to be dramatic for the state. And in more ways than one, after this earthquake and after what's happened today, we're going to be feeling the aftershocks for a long time to come.